Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins, and I'm delighted to introduce you all to Peter Rose. Peter is not only the owner, but he's also a founder of TEKenable. And TEKenable, big technology success, big technology company, helping organizations embrace everything from digital transformation, of course, AI innovation, and intelligent patient management solutions, something I'm going to be asking Peter about in a moment or two. But Peter, welcome to VistaTalks. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Simon. Delighted to be here.
Well, look, I've given you a bit of an introduction there, but let's go back a step. Let's talk a little bit about the founding of TEKenable, because TEKenable, every time I look at it, it's going from strength to strength. You're acquiring companies, you're growing organically, you're getting new customers. How has the company evolved from its early days, Peter, into this? I would describe it today as maybe a trusted digital AI transformation partner. Maybe I'm not quite getting that right, but you're working across a number of important industries, including regulated industries. So what inspired you to found the company, and how has it evolved from its early days?
Okay, so I suppose it wasn't so much inspired to found the company, Simon, as actually it was a needs must scenario. We were my business partner Nick and myself founded TEKenable in 2002, and we were heavily involved in the sales that took place in a previous company, Digital Channel Partners. We had no ownership in that business, but we were quite front and center in terms of selling and management. Digital Channel Partners unfortunately went into liquidation with the bursting of the internet bubble, and we found ourselves with a set of customers that Nick and I have made promises to, we made commitments to deliver projects for, taking the money from them. And when they were part way through, they were in flight when the company's going to liquidation. So what do you do? I mean, the only one thing we could do was we said, okay, if those customers were willing to transfer their contracts to us, we would complete their projects with the agreed scope within the agreed budget for the remaining timescale. And fortunately for us, a number of the customers, a high number of them actually came across to us. We did exactly that. It was a question of integrity and commitment. We made promises and we intended to keep them. So we delivered the projects, and they kind of looked at each other and said, well, what is this business all about? What does TEKenable actually do? Because we haven't really thought beyond delivering these. So we went off, we built a website, we used the money to hire some sales advice and so on and so forth. And TEKenable was born. And to be frank, Simon, at that time, we'd dug a hole in the road for somebody if they'd asked us to do it. But over the years, we specialized. So we've invested, we've seen the trends, global trends in IT, cloud services, low-code platforms, and more recently the AI. And we invested in them before they were really business value, on the basis that if we build it, they'll come. And they did, and they came in droves. So, but we still keep that sort of cultural element, if you like, of integrity and commitment and doing the right thing by the customer. So ultimately, it does the right thing for yourself too.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I love the fact that you said it came down to integrity. I mean, that's fantastic. And I think that's obviously stood well to TEKenable as one of its sort of founding core guides. You had these commitments that had been made, not through TEKenable at the time, but obviously when the company yourself and Nick were working in was no longer available to do that. You stepped in. There was a large amount of integrity in that. Because many people, you could have just walked away. It wasn't necessarily your responsibility. But obviously, from that, you kind of jump started because you had kind of people that had a need, and you could provide a value solution to them. And as you say, from that, the rest is history. I do want to get into something with you, Peter, though, while I've got you, because I want to talk about organizations. And I know you work with many, and you've worked with many over the years, but you mentioned something recently in an article I was reading, that many companies today are creating what I think you described it as technology toys, without clear business outcomes. And that I like the way you'd phrase that, because there's been an awful lot of experimentation, some of which I think is necessary, but there is an awful lot of technology toys at play without actually being tied to clear business outcomes. And in your view, from your vantage point, what's separating the successful AI projects from those that are probably failing to deliver real long-term value, Peter?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Simon. Thank you. Um, it's business value. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't matter whether it's an AI project or a non-AI project. If it's not generating business value, it's not going to survive. So, and business value generation always comes from a process change. And so if you don't have a process change affected by it, it's not generating value. And what we're seeing, and that's why I call them technology toys, is we're seeing a lot of organizations saying, okay, AI can do this. Isn't it fantastic? AI can summarize a document for me. Brilliant. Okay, let's get it summarizing all of our documents, and that'll be transformative. Well, it's only transformative if it changes something that somebody does. If it's summarizing a document but somebody doesn't need a summary, it's completely pointless, right? So it may be a stupid example, but the point is it has to be grounded in the business benefit. The business benefit arises from a process change, doing something differently or doing something that you couldn't previously do. And if it's a process change, then irrespective of what the technology is, whether it's AI or not, you should be able to quantify the benefit of doing it. It comes down to a classic business case. Does it reduce risk? Does it increase revenue? What is it? What is it that it's actually doing for you? So the best way to avoid any technology toys within your organization is to take the business case and don't accept the excuses of we don't know what the business case is just yet. We need to try it. To some extent, that's true in some cases, but you can at least quantify that there looks like there should be a business case and it's going to look a bit like this, right? A lot of people are saying it's AI. It's fantastic. It's some sort of mythical god that can transform everything for us. Let's just put it in, and it doesn't matter where we put it in or how hard we consider it, it's going to transform us. No, it isn't. It's just a technology like everything else.
Yeah, and I think what you're at there is the real hot topic that's out there, which is AI hype versus true business value, right? That's kind of
Yes.
what you're saying there. And
Yeah.
that there should be a business case and there should be a deliverable outcome of some description that's actually helping the business, right? Whether that's driving sales, revenue,
Yep.
profitability, more efficiency, etc. But there is an awful lot of technology toys and noise around
Yes.
AI, right? Um,
Which is a real shame, actually, Simon, because
mm,
it's what it's doing is it's to some extent giving the whole technology a bad name. If you're trying to use it inappropriately or you're using it for things that aren't going to generate benefit, not getting value from it, and then you know the company pops up a post on LinkedIn saying I tried this, didn't work, AI is rubbish, and it's this, and it's just it's the wrong way of thinking about it. And if you're coming at it from the technology, it's the wrong thing to do. It's always the wrong thing to do.
yeah, excellent. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well as kind of a follow-on to that question, staying in the AI area, but you've purposely positioned TEKenable as an AI first organization, if I'm right.
Yeah.
And I want to get your definition of what being AI first actually means in practice, Peter, for you and everybody at TEKenable, both internally within the company and for the clients that you work for. What are your views on that and maybe responsible AI development? Because being an AI first organization is one of those terms that I think could mean a few different things. What does it mean for you and your customers?
Okay. Well, internally within TechEnable, we have a team that we always have had a team that continuously seeks improvement in general. Right. So we look at how we do things and we look at feedback from customers and we look at opportunities in the market and so on. We got various sort of lab teams, if you like, experimenting and getting beyond the hype and figuring out the reality in all sorts of different technologies and new products being released, not just AI. But so if you combine sort of the lab teams and this continuous improvement agenda, then what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we've gone probably about as far as we can with the current tooling that's available to us. So let's redo that process. Let's relook at everything we do with a lens of AI. And again, grounded in the business case, but with a lens of AI. This is a new tool, has new capabilities, new things we've never been able to do before. What does that mean for us? How can we redesign our processes and so on? So we've done that now for 2 years, pretty much two full years at this stage, and the impact has been quite significant, I'd have to say. I'm not going to give you numbers because that would be confidential in terms of the company and what we're doing. But I suppose we've given AI first dibs on any new capability we want to stand up or on the existing ones we might want to make more efficient or replace, etc. And as such, we've got an AI team. We call it the AI Foundry. That AI Foundry team creates AI agents for us and our customers. And I can tell you we're using over 70 AI agents within TEKenable today, more than 70 of them. And that spans from everything from sales to project management to software development, QA testing, feedback, through HR and all the supporting functions like finance and so on and so forth. There's AI agents operating in pretty much all of them today. Um, but I do want to emphasize something, which is that they're not replacing people. They're supporting people. They're lifting up the capabilities of what people can do, taking away some of the drudge work, and letting them do some of the higher value requirements. And that brings me, I suppose, to the second part of your question, responsible AI. Responsible AI is morally very important as well as a legal requirement, quite frankly, between the AI Act and various other legal directives that are coming through. To act in a morally responsible manner is the very essence of what those legal frameworks are trying to drive at. But so everything we do, whether it's internal or external, it's all informed by and directed by the Microsoft Responsible AI framework. Now, there are many AI frameworks out there, United Nations passed created guidelines, etc. Microsoft has distilled it down, and we're using that. And we are actively audited every year to prove that we are doing that because we've got an AI advanced specialization accreditation with Microsoft. So to be able to keep that accreditation, we have to demonstrate that what we do for our customers and internally is actually in line with best practice, of which part is responsible AI. So it's really important is the answer.
Uh, that's really good to know. I didn't realize you had that many agents assisting humans, sort of
Yeah.
empowering humans, and I know you are continuing to hire humans in this new AI
Yes.
landscape because I see that
Yes.
happening online, and it is interesting the way you've described it. I suppose you're sort of managing humans and agents together now as TEKenable grows. One follow up question though on the agents that you now have, because you have an extensive number of agents across multiple disciplines in the company from what you've described. Do you find there's drift on those agents over time? Are you constantly having to manage them in the same way that we talk about, management in a human world? How does that
Yeah.
work in the agentic world at the moment, Peter?
We sort of joked internally about creating a HR department for the agents because they do need care and attention. They need governance more than anything. And what we're seeing is not so much drift in the sense that if they can do things, they continue to do them pretty much reliably. What we see is the opportunities perhaps increasing for them. So a new model might come out or a new framework might be created. And therefore we have to revisit them from time to time and say, is this still doing something that's A, relevant to what we do, and B, could it perhaps do it differently with some benefit arising because of the new technology that's come out? And as you're well aware, that happens on a monthly, if not weekly basis around here at the moment in AI. There's new stuff popping up all the time. It's really hard to keep track of it.
And are we at the stage then where the agents can help to advise on what better they could be doing? Are they sort of self-improving? Don't want to get down a rabbit
No,
hole
but
on
it's
that, but
no, but it is a really interesting question as to whether you could
yeah.
actually have an agent that monitors the agent and looks for
Mm.
improvement possibilities. Yeah, I mean that is something that you could actually do. Certainly, I'm aware of companies that have implemented agents that monitor, for example, all of the Teams conversations and emails in the organization to look for systemic challenges within the organization and then identify them and surface them from this vast quantity of information, and makes recommendations as to potential opportunities for improvement with no predetermination that the answer is going to be implement another AI solution. It's just looking for opportunities for improvement in general. Could be a non-technology solution. It could be a restructuring, process change, whatever, or it could be something supported by technology. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're somewhere between sci-fi, dystopian futures, and the answer to everything. Because it's somewhere in between that mix, I think, Peter.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel slightly sorry for science fiction authors, to be honest with you, because by the time they've written and published the book, the darn thing's become reality 6 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like that. And I think your point about the models. I mean, every time I seem to, flip open the MacBook, that there's a new model. There's somebody who's
Mm,
launched something, whether
yeah,
it's sort of the cutting edge sort of hyperscalers, or whether it's the sort of
yeah,
fringe models, or open source models. It's changing so fast. I
it
mean,
is.
whether it was mobile or internet, or name the technology curve, but this is just it's at a different level.
I say a lot of the models that are coming out, just because they're new, doesn't necessarily mean they're better at what you want to do. I think we're going to start to see these models differentiate themselves in terms of specialization and particular areas, rather than being the general purpose models that we currently have. Um, that's my one of my guesses, I suppose, as to where this might end up. Which we're running AI solutions quite comfortably on things like 4.0 or 3.5 Turbo in some cases, which are in AI, generative AI terms are ancient at this stage, but it's only practiced sort of 6 to 18 months ago type of thing. So don't necessarily assume that new is better. New is generally more expensive, but it's not necessarily better.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're having lots of discussions at the moment about the value of more niche, small language models, as opposed to large,
Mm,
publicly
mm,
open language models. And then, of course, you get into the conversation around data integrity, etc. And I wanted
yeah.
to maybe move our conversation on again, if I can, Peter, because
Mm,
I know you've worked extensively in the financial area, banking, insurance. You've done a lot of work there in sort of software development over many years at TEKenable. But you also now are developing innovative patient management systems, something I touched on earlier. And that obviously touches in not financial, but maybe healthcare
yeah.
providers. And
Yeah.
I know you're definitely improving patient experiences there. I'd like you to bring that to life for me. But can you explain maybe some of the core challenges that these systems are beginning to solve, and also why digital patient engagement has become
Mm,
so important in modern healthcare? And there's a whole regulatory piece there too, isn't there?
yeah. Yeah, there is. And as usual with the regulations are with the best intention. They are to protect patient confidentiality, they're to ensure quality of service and so on and so forth, but sometimes create a framework that doesn't accommodate some of the things that we could do to actually enhance that. But generally speaking, we don't usually run up against issues with regulatory compliance. And when we do, of course, we can't do it. But the sort of patient systems that we're building at the moment, Simon, would be solving problems like you go all the way from organizations that might be on multiple sites with paper files records, and they may as well not exist because they're completely opaque to almost anybody working in the organization. Um, and that hugely impacts on quality of care, but also in the administrative efficiency of the organization. And that speaks to the time spent by people who could be patient facing, actually sitting at computers and typing stuff, or worse, writing it in paper files to be filed in a gigantic warehouse. So the kind of systems that we're building, first of all, they're built in layers. So a bit like an onion. So within the very core of it, you have secure records and data storage. Security is paramount for this, and access control and so on and so forth. But having a centralized store is really important. The next layer out is an access layer. And that's providing a single source of the truth and real-time collaboration capability across sites and between medical specialities. So if a speech and language therapist needs to understand what happened in somebody's recent surgery around the cochlear implant, for example, now they can, because it's all in the same system, it's all patient-centric, and if they were given the right access rights, they can discover that kind of information and potentially tailor their treatment as a result. The next layer out with your workflow layer, so that provides a standardized way for doing things like patient transfers or referral to a new speciality, a new clinician, or even a support team, for example, maybe community discharge services and so on. And outside of that, then, is where the really clever stuff starts to kick in. Well, I think it's clever. So I leave you and your listeners to judge. But so we're able to do things like, for example, if you are a social work uh, person and you're going out to meet with one of your customers, um, you can put a mobile phone on the table and with their permission and knowledge, just record the conversation. Just literally record it in the way we're recording it. No video required, just the audio, no AI involved, etc. And then that recording can be taken automatically when you leave that patient's house or place of interview, can be taken from that phone in the background, uploaded to our AI service, translated not just into a simple transcript, but translated into structured report of that meeting. The kind of report that all social care providers, all medical specialists, etc., have to make of every single interaction that they have. And we structure it, fill in the boxes, present it for review by that specialist at the end. Now, where's the difference here? It's two differences. First difference is in the interaction. I don't have to make notes. I can make some paper notes for backup of the really key things, but now I'm eyeballing the patient, I'm interacting with the patient, I'm reading the non-verbal cues. I'm not focusing on the mundane of writing notes down. So there's better interaction, there's better understanding, there's a greater trust generated. Second benefit, administrative burden is removed. I'm 40 years in IT. There's only 104 keys on the average keyboard, and apparently my fingers still don't know where they are, right? I can't type to save my life, and I'm in the business. I strongly suspect a lot of medical professionals will be the two-finger typist type of thing. It'll take them ages to write up something like that, and then have to listen back to a transcript or read the notes. It's very, very time-consuming and practically zero value add, right? Using the kind of techniques that we have, that meeting can be turned into both notes ready for review, structured notes ready for review, and actual structured data points. We can do risk assessments. We can assess the meeting against international standards for that type of process, etc. That becomes structured data and gets added to the core data set. Even things like service needs capture for the person can be added to the core data set. We think they might need this sort of support in 3 years' time. That information can then be distilled out to the final onion layer, which is the quality of care analysis, projections of service needs, etc., which is now possible because of the quality of data and information that's in the system. Not in paper records, not in disparate systems, not in some form that can't be interpreted. They're in there, structured, and data points ready for analysis.
So it's very refreshing to hear that perspective, Peter. Thanks for bringing that into the spotlight, because so often we hear about the next flashy model, or we hear the sort of headlines from the big AI companies. But to hear about the benefits that somebody gets from being with a patient, helping that human care more, the time it saves a nurse, for example, the amount of new medications and procedures that doctors have to keep on top of. We're sort of passing the point where human brain can sort of scale all that. So it comes back to what you said earlier, I think, AI enabling humans to do better, to focus more on the important part of the role and removing maybe some of that mundane. But I really like the fact with all these paper records, how you're making that more accessible, more able to be used. And it helps us on this move forward to more personalized healthcare, I think, doesn't it, Peter?
Oh, 100%. It gives the caregivers more time to give the care and gives them the freedom to give it more attentively, I suppose.
Yeah. And I suppose we have to touch a little bit on ethics and privacy and data security, because you need safeguards in there. And are there any sort of best practices you think organizations need to do? Like you were mentioning earlier, you have to maintain certain standards. I know we have a lot of ISO certifications and we have to be audited. Is that one of the best practices? Do you have to put a team in place? What do you think organizations should prioritize when they're operating in these kind of fields?
Again, a good question. I suppose that if I were to distill it down to three things, the first one, and the single most important one in my view, all security and regulatory practices, etc., typically come down to cybersecurity, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and moral approach to doing the right thing. So the very foundational question that people have to ask themselves is, does the company that will be handling my data and giving AI processing to it have the same objectives for it that I do? So what I mean by that is there are companies out there, many companies out there that make their living pretty much by just training models. That's what they do. They train the best model, and they may offer a service to the public to access that for a fee or for free. But their standing in the world is determined by the latest and greatest model, and producing it is being better than the competition and so on. And they'll have privacy policies that say, we're not going to use your data. If you turn off the little flag that says I can use your data, we won't use your data for model training. But quite frankly, the financial value, the financial imperative for these businesses to ignore that at some point in the future and just use that information is huge. I'm not saying anybody is actually doing it. I don't have that knowledge, but I am concerned that they could potentially do it. Whereas if you contrast that with companies like Microsoft, for example, they're fully aligned with your objectives. They do not train models. Their business model is keeping your data safe and inside your security boundary. So the three things I would say: one, vendor selection, really, really important. Right? Get a vendor that's aligned with your objectives and has a roadmap and longevity in it, lots of scope of functionality, not just a specialist vendor in one area. Two, responsible AI compliance. You've got your cybersecurity fundamentals is number three. Right? So pick the vendor that will look after your information, make sure you're doing the right thing, and make sure that it's secure and tidy like all of your IT systems would be.
Love it. Thank you. Look, I want to squeeze in a couple more questions if I can,
Okay?
before we run out of time together. Particularly around introducing AI and around transformation, because there seems to be a lot of people, back to technology toys, I suppose, a lot of people experimenting, but there needs to be a culture change or a process change. And I'm wondering, with digital transformation products, you can sometimes face resistance or
Yeah.
complexity during the implementation. And AI is no different. So based on your experience at TEKenable, for you and the teams, what are the key ingredients if you want to successfully introduce AI and modern technologies into an organization, maybe that's been around a little while,
Okay.
Peter?
Yeah. I look, age is no determinant of willingness to change, to be honest, in our experience. Some of the oldest companies have reinvented themselves multiple times. I give ourselves as an example of that. Yes, we're in the technology industry, which constantly reinvents itself, and therefore we're quite used to change and accustomed to change. But we'll be quarter of a century old next year in February. So we're not a youngster anymore. We're not a startup. So, but the three things, you mentioned one of them, Simon, already, is take a business first approach. Avoid the technology toys. The second, I say, I suppose, is don't treat a transformation project, whether it's business transformation, digital transformation, or whatever you're having yourself transformation. It's a change program, part of which is technology. It's not a technology implementation program. So many people go in and say, we're going to put this system in, and we're going to have a project manager, and we're going to have milestones, and the system will come in, and then people will use it. They might. They probably won't use it to the best of its advantage, or they might just reject it entirely and you wasted your money. So treat it as a change program. You have to bring the people along with you. Part of that, by the way, is if it's AI, it's positioning it and being real about it being assistive technology. If it's lifting the person and they can see it's taking some of the rubbish out of their job that they hate doing, they're going to be more supportive of it than if they think it's a threat. And then finally, and I know it's a self-serving statement, but use a partner like TEKenable who has experience, track record, and frankly, your best interests at heart. Our best customers are the ones that have been with us for life. We've customers that are over 20 years old, still working with us. And that's because we don't put our best interests first. We put their best interests first. And by so doing, we actually put ours first as well.
Love it. Love that, Peter. Fantastic. And I'm looking forward to seeing the celebrations for 25 years. That's fantastic. You're coming up
Yeah.
on your quarter century. I suppose, look, final question from me. Let's do a little bit of sort of future predictions or a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Let's look ahead a little bit,
Yeah.
because you must be talking about emerging trends. You must have to keep your finger on the pulse there. But what do you think? What do
Yeah.
you believe will be the most significant things that shape the future of this sort of AI journey we all find ourselves on over the next number of years, Peter? What's your view?
Simon, there's a special place in hell for people who try to predict AI in the next few months, let alone the next few years. Oh my God. So I suppose they're already here. What's gaining more and more traction and more capabilities, autonomous or semi-autonomous AI agents. You see people using tools like OpenClaw, for example, which really is the Wild West at this point, but and doing some absolutely seeing OpenClaw doing some absolutely crazy things where it's let loose with some guidance but no oversight. You see it negotiating insurance settlements for people who hadn't got around to it yet, found it in the email, negotiated the settlement with the insurer, and then proudly announced that it had done it without them having any idea it was going to do it. This kind of autonomous, semi-autonomous, but with much better governance and much better frameworks and guidelines and human in the loop considerations. It can't just go and do something. I see that evolving at scale across organizations. Um, we're seeing a lot, and we're building systems ourselves actually for customers that use speech. The multimodal interfaces, you can talk to them. They can see things. So they can see your computer, they can see what you're working on, or they can see the environment you're in at that point in time, whatever it may be, blended with the current AI capabilities. So AI is kind of dumb when it's just the end of a text keyboard. It's like making a human deaf and blind and actually saying, well, I'll just talk to you through tactile touch. It makes much more difficult for it to be useful. So having that multimodal interface. And then most importantly, and it's not a technology one realistically, but and I hope it's my parting gift to the world from this podcast, if you like, is I hope to see a shift away from thinking about AI as a way to replace humans. There's too much of this will replace human, replace human, replace human. No, it's a move to AI being exclusively an assistive technology that allow the humans to do more.
And on that wonderful note, I think we've unfortunately come to the end of our time together, Peter. But thank you for those insights. Sorry for putting you on the spot in terms of the future predictions, but I'd kind of bet on TEKenable and yourself and the team because you continue to iterate, you continue to be at the cutting edge, and you continue to have customers that value your integrity. So thank you. It brings us, unfortunately, to the end of the show today with Peter Rose of TEKenable. I'm going to ask everybody who's watching or listening to this episode around the world to tune in again to see and or listen to the next VistaTalks show, where once again we'll be discussing some interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world, just like Peter. But Peter Rose, thank you very much for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure.